All right, well, let's talk about it. We noticed at CES that Donut Labs claimed that they had the first commercially available all solid state battery in a production vehicle. They're putting it in these Verge motorcycles, and they made a lot of amazing claims. And as you know, I was a little bit skeptical, and I think a lot of people were skeptical. And they knew that people were skeptical, so they started this whole website called I Do Not Believe, which I thought was a little clever. The pun is pretty clever. And they are saying that they're going to release third party validation of their claims. And they released their first validation of their fast charging performance a few days ago. So let's review what they are claiming. So they are claiming a density of 400 watt hours of per kilogram, so gravimetric density, which is quite high. They said that they would fast charge from 0 to 100 in as little as 5 minutes. This was the most amazing claim, which is they're saying that their battery will go for 100,000 cycles, which is incredible. And then they're saying that they're extremely safe. They don't have thermal runaway, and they will function at a temperature range between -30 Celsius to 100 degrees Celsius. And this is probably the biggest claim. They're saying that it's going to be cheaper than other lithium ion batteries, and that it doesn't have any special toxic materials. It won't have things like cobalt or things that are rare earth metals. They're going to be 100% green, and I don't know what their definition of green is, but there'll be abundant materials with global availability, no reliance on rare or geopolitically sensitive resources, lower material cost than lithium ion. All right, so those are, if this battery were to exist and meet the specifications that they say, it would be an amazing technological achievement. Now, so what they have is they have this report from VTT. VTT is a state-run, well-respected organization, and they sent them a sample. So I don't have any doubts of VTT's reliability in producing good third-party results, and I don't think there is any bias or anything. And they're not going to be bribed or anything to give Donut Labs a good result. They have too much at stake to lose their reputation over something like this. All right. So here's their customer. This is their customer report, and I think it's very interesting the way they word things. If you go to the front, they tell you what it is. It says the aim of this project was to conduct independent charging performance tests on the energy storage devices supplied by the customer, which the customer identified as a solid state battery cell. So they're not, VTT is not saying it is a solid state battery cell. They're saying the customer told us it's a solid state battery cell, and that's what we're going to say that they said, but we're not going to say that it's a solid state battery cell. We're merely here to test the charging capacity. Now, they started with the fast charging capacity, which they claimed was going to be 0 to 100 in about 5 minutes, which is extremely fast charging, but not crazy. There's already a commercially available, and this is a lithium iron phosphate battery cell. It's in a vehicle already, the Zeekr 7X. So you can buy this vehicle in China, and it would go from 0 to 80% in 9 minutes. Oh, in 10.5 minutes. Okay, so it goes 10 to 80% in 10.5 minutes, which is really fast. So I think another interesting thing about charging is at the higher end, then it makes less and less difference. Like, for example, in order for, okay, let's go back to this thing. So they have they tested this thing at 5 and 11C. So 11C would give it 5-minute charging if it could sustain 11C throughout the entire cycle, which it does not. But let's go back and take a look at this. So at 5C charging, you can see that it goes from 0 to 80 in about 10 minutes. So basically, the Zeekr is doing essentially 5C charging already. It's in a commercially available vehicle. You can get 5C charging with the lithium iron phosphate chemistry. And so that's what this does at 5C. But then they pushed it to 11C. And at 11C, it does it 0 to 80 in about 4.5 minutes, which is pretty close to the 5 minutes they're talking about. Now, in order to go from 0 to 100, it took about a little over 7 minutes. So it's not quite hitting their metric of 0 to 100 in 5 minutes, but it's reasonably close. And I suspect that if they get even reasonably close to any of their claims, it's still going to be an amazing battery. So they hit this, but here's what's interesting, is that going from 5C to 11C is a really big lift. It's extremely taxing on the battery, but it only saves you 5 minutes at the charger. So the difference between 10 minutes and 5 minutes is not that great. If you stop for 10 minutes and you can basically recharge your battery to 80%, I think most people are happy with that. And then let's say that someone comes out with a like 22C battery, which would be extremely stressful on the physics of the whole battery. You would go from 5 minutes to 2.5 minutes. And like that is not, there's a point of diminishing returns with charging speed. And for me personally, 10 minutes is fine. 10 minutes doesn't bother me. 10 minutes is enough to like stop, go to the bathroom, relax a little bit, and then continue on your trip. Um, going from 10 minutes going from 10 minutes to like 30 minutes, now that makes a difference. Like 30 minutes is a real that takes some time. You're waiting around for that. But 10 minutes I think is already a completely reasonable time. So for me, the fast charging capacity is probably the least interesting of these claims. I think the more interesting claims are going to be, so energy density, somewhat interesting. I don't think that that's super duper interesting. As long as it's kind of reasonably the same as current batteries, I think that's going to be plenty good. However, this I think is the most interesting one. 100,000 cycles. If you can have a battery that lasts 100,000 cycles, that is a multiple lifetime battery. This battery will outlast most people's lifetimes if you use in a car. Like this would last like 80 years or something in a car, or 100 years. It is so much beyond current battery capacities and lifespans that it's crazy. So even if they hit 10,000 cycles, I think that would be impressive. Even if they hit 1/10 of their claim, that would be impressive. Now, currently, QuantumScape, which is another solid state battery company, they have a prototype that's being tested by VW, and they did 1,000 cycles and retained more than 95% capacity, and that was already impressive. So if they can prove that they get even 10,000 cycles with 90% capacity, I think I'll be impressed. Then the thermal, one of the big problems is at cold temperatures, current lithium-ion chemistries do very poorly, as we saw when they had that big cold snap in Chicago and things like that. But if you have a battery that retains its capacity at -30 up to 100 degrees Celsius, that's impressive. Now, what they claim here is that it retains over 99% of its capacity at -30 degrees Celsius. They need to prove that next. That would be extremely impressive. And then high temperatures test, they said it retains over 99% of its capacity at 100 C. Now we know that's not true, because when they did the test, they stopped it at 90 degrees Celsius. And I don't know if that was a metric that Donut Labs said to BTT, like, please don't let the battery go over 90 degrees Celsius, or if that is BTT's standard safety cutoff, like they won't let anything go over 90 degrees Celsius. But whatever the case is, when they hit 90 degrees Celsius, they lost like they only got back like 95% of the capacity. So they had a capacity drop at 90 degrees Celsius, but still reasonably close. So I think this test that they have has it reasonably close, but they need to test the temperature claim. I think that's the most interesting thing. And then this probably is the most important thing, that it's scalable. You can produce a lot of it, and you can produce a lot of it cheaply. Um, like if you had a thing that's extremely safe, has a high cycle life, charges really fast, really dense, but costs 10 times more than current batteries, well, that's not going to be a commercially viable product. Or even if it's like 3 times more, it's probably not commercially viable. But if you can get, in my opinion, if you can get even half the claims that they say, and it can be cheaper than a regular battery, they have something. It's not as earth shaking as what they're claiming, but they still have something. And and in my mind, it doesn't even matter if it's a solid state battery. Like, who cares what it is? Maybe it runs on unicorn farts or something. But if it can be made cheaply, and it is extremely safe, and it has high cycle life, and you can charge it fast, and it's dense, who cares what the chemistry is? Who cares what the physics behind it is? Um, as a user, as long as it gives these metrics, and it's cheap, and it's not dangerous, and it doesn't require any like toxic materials, then that's great. It, the chemistry it's using, the technology it's using is of academic interest only. So I don't actually care if it's a solid state battery or not. I care that they verify these last 3 claims, because I think those are the most interesting. So there's supposed to be another one coming out in a few days, a new test, and I don't know what that's going to be. I'm guessing it's energy density. That's going to be pretty easy to verify that. The cycle life is going to take a long time to verify. I mean, even to discharge this thing 10,000 times is going to take months of continuous testing. The safety and the capacity at different temperatures, that would be pretty easy to verify. So I hope to see that next. This also, I think, is the hardest to verify, because in order to verify cost, they will have to scale it. And I don't know that they have a plant that has scaled it to large production. So they would have to build out a plant. They would have to produce a lot of this, and then they would have to sell it at scale and make a profit on it to show that it is cheaper. This is going to be, but this is the most crucial thing. All right, so that's my take on it. I don't actually care if it's a solid state battery or not. The fast charging to me is like the least interesting part of their claims. Cycle life, safety, thermal stability, energy stability at different wide temperatures, and low cost and scalability. Those are the most important things. And I think those are the things that we need to verify. And I'm glad it seems like they are trying to verify it. And I'm going to kind of have a wait and see approach. I still remain skeptical. But it's good. They've verified partially this claim. To a large degree, they've verified it. The rest of the claims, I think, are just much more important. All right, thanks for watching, guys. Have a great day.